Hey guys, and welcome back to another Conan Exiles video. Today is the 5th and possibly final building tips video, and I'll be going through some more technical and stylistic things you can do in your own builds that can help you to vastly improve your designs. So without further ado, let's get started. So we're starting off with corner pillars. Having pillars in the corner of a base is a great way to frame the build, and there is actually a way to do it without any mods. Firstly, you want to place down your base plate using ceilings and pillars. For this I'll be using a 3x3. Then take a set of stairs and attach it to the bottom side of the ceiling near a corner. You can then snap a pillar in the centre at the top of the stairs, and then from there place a ceiling atop that pillar, place down another set of stairs going in the direction of where you want the pillar to go, and then build pillars down from the top of the centre of the stairs. This should result in the pillar running all the way down to the ground level right in the corner of the build. You can then repeat this on as many corners as you'd like, remove all the pillars above the ceilings and then place walls underneath the ceilings, and now you have a base plate with corner pillars in place. Now when you use this technique there are one or two minor downsides. Firstly, you do have to build the pillars up before you build any of the walls, so you do have to be 100% certain on your build plan, as any adjustments will be much more difficult. Secondly, pillars interact really weirdly with window frames and sometimes door frames, locking their orientation often but not always. Therefore, it's best to keep those frame pieces away from the pillars. You can of course go even further with this by framing multiple parts of a build, but it does get difficult and more fiddly the more framing you do, so I only tend to frame the core shape of the structure. As you can see with this little Numidian watchtower I've built, using the pillar trick to frame the build gives it a little more shape and definition, which really helps to bolster the overall design. Next up we have sloping side walls. You ever built a small outpost or a watchtower and wish you could do something a bit more interesting with the walls? Worry not, this one is a tip for you. Rather than using regular walls, we'll be using regular and inverted sloped sides to create a pattern in the wall that will help make it a bit more visually appealing. This is most apparent with Khitan due to the overall structure of the pieces, though you'll see different results with different materials. This is a fairly simple tip, however it's one I've only really discovered in the past couple of months. It's not exactly a game changer, but it can definitely help with builds where patterns or interesting shapes within the walls can make the difference. Of course, this isn't the only thing you can do with sloping side walls. Let's say I'm building a small stone wood house. I could just build it normally, however, instead I'll be using slope sides to transition into each material change. I started with a black ice base, transitioning into Numidian on the ground floor, and then on the first floor I transitioned from Numidian to insulated wood. A build like this would work perfectly fine without the sloping sides. However, by including them, it adds a bit more shape and fluidity into the design, and it also provides better transition into each new material type. Overall, I feel like this tip helps to make the build feel more cohesive, rather than a design that can easily be distinctly separated into 2 or 3 separate components. Next up is foundation stepping, one of my personal favourite tips. As you'll know, when you place down a foundation and then try to place a fence foundation on the side, it will usually sit flush. However, there are indeed 2 clip points on each side of a foundation, one slightly lower than the other. When snapping the fence foundation on the lower snap point, you can then place a foundation slightly lower than the previous one, leaving about a ceiling's width worth of height between the two. This is fortunately just enough to walk over fairly smoothly, so it can work as a staircase, and of course you can continue to do this until you're happy with the result. There is a slight downside to this technique, which is that any walls you place on the foundations are also lowered. This is fine for small entranceways, but the different snap points will start to become problematic later on in the build. Therefore, if you instead surround lowered foundations with regular fence foundations at the same height all the way around, you can ensure all the walls will sit flush, whilst also still retaining the aesthetic and function that stepped foundations provide. This tip is one of my personal favourites for stuff like medieval taverns. Having a lowered section inside a tavern, whilst a relatively small addition, can make the world of difference aesthetically. Even in this small tavern I've quickly designed, the lowered section and the larger table within it implies an air of exclusivity and, to a degree, almost secrecy when compared to the regular tables scattered about the taller section. Foundation stepping is a great technique to know and use, and can easily elevate the interior of your builds. Next is a classic one, buttresses. Let's say this section of the wall here is the side of a house. Boring and flat? Yes, it absolutely is, so let's fix it. Historically, buttresses provided support and defence to larger walls, however, including them on smaller walls like this is a solid option for creating visual depth and making something boring into something way more attractive. As you can see, I just build simple columns up the walls at regular-ish intervals, and it creates quite a nice shape. Of course, we don't have to stop there. The straight up buttresses are a more basic design, but you can get way more fancy if you want to. For an alternative, I built the buttresses straight up again as usual, but I extended the first floor balcony using vaulted ceilings, and built small alcoves on that extended balcony using Numidian pieces capped off with rooftop caps. This looks way more fancy and intricate, though realistically it's still a very simple design to execute. Of course, you're not restricted to square buttresses, though in my opinion they are the most flexible. You can easily make wedge buttresses too, and they will provide a similar level of detail that will really help to elevate any build that you think looks a bit too flat on the outside. Buttresses are a great way to add extra depth and detail to the exterior of your build. They're a core element of castle and Gothic architecture, but they'll fit almost anywhere, and I recommend them very highly. Finally, roof risers. As you can see, I've constructed this storm glass temple here with flying buttresses, towers and all the works, going for a Gothic style. However, if you want to make it even more intricate, roof risers are a great way to do so. Just a forewarning, this won't work for every build, some styles just do not suit them, but Gothic is perhaps the best style to use them with. By using walls, wall caps and sloping sides, I create rising shapes from the circular elements of the build, namely the towers, to provide almost a sort of hood that gives these towers a bit more shape and presence without adding any significant amount of mass. Risers do tend to work best, at least in my opinion, on circular towers and triangular building pieces, though that's not to say they couldn't work on square elements too, they just seem to lend themselves really nicely to the more gentle shape of circular towers. As you can see, I've added a couple of risers here, and it has definitely elevated the overall shape and fluidity of the build without editing the actual intended vibe too much. Along with risers, you can also incorporate lifts into your roof design too. These are just narrow, tall sections topped off with a rooftop cap that provide a bit of extra height and shape to the build without introducing any extra traversable area. They're alright on this build, they don't make or break it really, but on really large castles, lifts are very nice to add. Roof risers and lifts work really nicely for Gothic architecture. Whilst they might not be historically accurate for the style, they provide the extra shape and fluidity that is a great improvement on an already striking style. I also highly recommend risers with Elven architecture, as the shapes and flows it provides works really nicely with that theme. And there we have it, 5 more building tips you can use in Conan Exiles. Thanks for watching. It seems my building tips videos are always well received, and though it took quite a long time to come up with some tips that I thought were good enough to share for this one, I hope they've provided you with some great ideas that you can use in your own builds. If you enjoy my content, all the links to my Twitch, Twitter, Discord, Patreon, Host Havoc affiliate page, NordVPN discount and NordPass discount are available in the description below. However, of course, you can simply just leave a like, a comment or subscribe. Any of those are very greatly appreciated. Patrons get a bunch of nice benefits, including sneak peeks of videos, your name in every video, custom made wallpapers in 1080p and 4K resolutions, full-size build blueprints, Discord roles and more. On that note, a massive thanks to our patrons Sadialot, Randar, Connor, Ivy, Torn, Ill-Fated, Coffeeman04, Marion Ladd, Alfric and Eagle Rose. As always, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you soon.